So, in the late 30s, there was this big event going on called the Second World War. It was really horrible, lots of people died, and one of the countries participating in the war was the United States. But people don't want to go to war, so you have to motivate them, and what better way to do that than by influencing the entertainment they see? Between 1942 and 1945, the US Office of War Information had a special unit dedicated to Hollywood. During this time, they reviewed, revised, and rejected over 1,600 scripts, all in an effort to produce only movies that portrayed the war in a positive light. This was the first time the US mandated that all movies be vetted on topics relating to war, but actually Hollywood and the US military's partnership goes back further than that. Starting loosely in 1910, Hollywood and the US military's relationship wouldn't hit its first notable moment until the release of 1927's Wings. Following two aspiring pilots who leave their girl behind, the film was made using over 3,000 infantrymen as extras, plus military pilots and planes from the US Air Force. The film was a huge success, going on to win the first ever Best Picture award at the Oscars. To be fair, for the time the film looks very nice, and contemporary filmmakers noticing the quality of authentic equipment became more willing to work with the US military than ever before, in exchange for equipment and real military training. Also, let's be honest, this is the US we're talking about, so money was of course a factor. Military equipment is expensive, and often letting the government edit your screenplay is an easy way to save a few $1,000,000. For context, a single F-14 Tomcat costs about $38 million, while the budget for a movie like Top Gun is $15 million. But before a script is approved by the Department of Defense, there's a few things they need to do before they qualify first. The entire list of requirements isn't publicly available, but from the research I've done, you can pretty much piece it together. Captain Russell Coons, the director of the Navy Office of Information, states that they reject around 95% of scripts submitted because, and I quote, "because in most cases it doesn't represent our core values. We're not going to support a program that disgraces a uniform or presents us in a compromising way." Now, before we get into the validity of that description, I just want to read out all of the things that can get your script rejected. Starting off with suggestion of military incompetence, suggestion of military participation in war crimes, loss of control over nuclear weapons, influence by oil companies, military involvement in arms sales and drugs trafficking, use of chemical or biological weapons, and finally, US involvement in assassinations, torture, and overseas coups. An official statement from the Department of Defense page on their collaboration with Hollywood reads, "While Hollywood is paid to tell a compelling story that will make money, the Department of Defense is looking to tell an accurate story." But is it really? It may be just me, but I feel like if you aren't talking about at least a few war crimes the United States has committed trying to spread democracy, then you're not really trying to portray your core values realistically. The military is clearly more interested in simplifying any narratives to America good, the rest bad, than any actual authenticity. But to be fair, I don't expect anything less than this level of dishonesty about America's past. What did surprise me though is the extent that the American military's ideology and influence has seeped its way into American entertainment, and it's been doing it for decades. In the 50s, posing as film executives, the Central Intelligence Agency purchased the rights to the George Orwell story Animal Farm, and went into production on it without letting anyone know they were working on a film funded, produced, and made by the CIA. Some changes made by them included portraying the character of Snowball as a fanatic intellectual whose plans, if carried through, would have led to a disaster no less complete than under Napoleon. The ending of the movie was of course changed as well to reflect more on American values. Now, I know you're probably thinking that's crazy, but no way I'd be susceptible to propaganda. I know better than that. Tanner Mirlis, a professor at Ontario Tech, says, "No country in the world turns out as many images of itself as the military hero, like the United States does." So today, we can put your perceptibility to the test. Here are an incomplete list of movies that have changed their scripts for military approval, which includes Apollo 13, Armageddon, Batman and Robin, Captain Phillips, Deep Impact, Godzilla, I Am Legend, Indiana Jones, some Marvel movies but specifically the Iron Man ones and Captain Marvel, Jurassic Park 3, some James Bond movies, a few John Wayne movies, King Kong, The Silence of the Lambs, Star Trek 4, Top Gun movies, Transformer movies, True Lies, Wonder Woman 1984, and more. The estimated number of movies and TV shows the military has been involved in is around 2,500. Nowadays, the military's involvement has changed since the Second World War. In the 40s, you had to actually drive down to a recruitment center and sign up to be in the military. But nowadays, the military is coming into theaters and getting people to sign up right after watching the film. Yeah, in coordination with filmmakers, the military was able to work with Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick as a way of boosting up recruitment numbers. Marvel has even used characters in their own movies as a way of promoting the US military as well. The extent to which the military has extended its influence over the films it corrects continues to grow, now openly using characters from the film to endorse and promote the military, rather than trying to just sway the public's opinion. It's also been revealed through the production assistance agreement the Pentagon had with the producers of Top Gun Maverick that members of the Navy would edit the script to weave in key talking points. Now, the documents don't go into a lot of depth into what that meant, but I'm assuming it means that either the dialogue or the story was changed in some way so that the military is portrayed more favorably, or more likely that an enemy of those core American values is portrayed less favorably. Now, the American military has a lot of terrible writers and even worse artists. For the most part, if you know what you're watching, you can tell some of these pro-military, pro-America messages in them. For example, Iron Man was one movie that was worked on very intensely in collaboration with the military, and it shows. Tony Stark is an arms dealer in the version that we got, but in the original script, he had refused to inherit his father's company on account of being anti-war. There's also a scene that stands out where he has a quick debate with a reporter, essentially being the US's self-insert version of a 2010's SJW Destroyed about their opinion on arms dealing and imperialism, before he convinces her to sleep with him. Hollywood's Godzilla has also become one of the worst offenders for this as well, having its whole message be flipped around. In the 50s, when the first Godzilla was released in Japan, it was an allegory for the nuclear destruction suffered by Japanese citizens at the hands of the United States. When the military got their hands on the story rights, however, the message of the story was quickly flipped. Instead of being an anti-war story based on true events, the story instead focused on how nuclear bombs were the only chance at defeating Godzilla. It's almost funny that the way the US responded to Japan's anti-war symbol is by buying its rights, putting it in a $1 million movie, and then killing it with the same weapons that were used in the tragedy that created the symbol itself. But more than symbolism, history itself can be changed as well. In the 2001 movie Black Hawk Down, the Battle of Mogadishu, an event mostly caused by US incompetence, is mostly portrayed as an event depicting the strength of the American military, while completely ignoring the factors causing the event, as well as the hundreds of citizens that were killed that day. Something similar had happened with the John Wayne movie The Green Berets, where an anti-war reporter tags along with a group of soldiers and discovers why it's so important that the United States invades Vietnam. But in the film, the group comes across North Vietnamese fighters that the film depicts committing the same violent acts that the US was later found out to be doing themselves. I could keep going, believe me, but I hope my point has been made. Since the beginning, the US military has been influencing the stories and perceptions of them using movies that people think are just for entertainment. I think it's only fair that people are aware about the media they are consuming, and I hope you learned something about it at least. What's your opinion about this, and at what point do you think it becomes propaganda? That's all from me for now. Have a good day, and peace.